You've been in a room full of people talking, and you say nothing. Not because you had nothing to say, but because something in you knew adding your voice wouldn't help. So you stayed quiet, and no one noticed. But someone does. That stillness you carry, the kind that doesn't announce itself but changes the way people breathe when you're near. And somehow, you feel it. It's a quiet realization, one most people never arrive at. They think silence means absence, but sometimes it means something else entirely. This is the story of a rabbit who never spoke and still changed everything. There was a rabbit who almost never spoke. But that wasn't for the reason you think. Not because he was afraid, not because he lacked thoughts, observations, or the ability to notice what others missed. He had simply learned early and quietly, most conversations weren't real. They were more like a performance. And once you notice it, it becomes hard to unsee. And he had no interest in performing. The forest he lived in was noisy, not because of the wind or the rain, but because of voices. Not loud in volume, but loud in presence. And those voices were doing more than you might think. The crow was the loudest of them. He moved from branch to branch with that restless energy of someone who needed to be heard to feel real. He had an opinion about everything, a reaction before things had even finished happening. But it wasn't just that he talked. When he ran out of his own material, he borrowed from others, their choices, their mistakes, their private moments, and he turned them into something the whole forest could talk about. The fox was quieter, and somehow that made him more dangerous. Because what he chose to say was never random, but his impact was no less. He listened carefully and spoke selectively, which made what he said land harder. He knew which details to emphasize and which to leave out. He understood that a story told to the right animal at the right moment could travel further than any shout. The rabbit saw everything, but no one even noticed him, and that was more important than it seemed. He was there the day the crow announced that the deer had been seen crying alone at the edge of the meadow. And he was there when the fox, almost gently, added that it wasn't the first time. He watched the deer's name move through the forest, like something passed around without permission. He said nothing, but sometimes the point isn't to speak. Not because he didn't care, but because he knew that adding his voice to that current would only strengthen it. Sometimes, not speaking feels more right. What the deer needed wasn't sound, it was stillness. Eventually, the crow noticed the rabbit's silence. He took it as a lack of approval, and he felt that familiar unease of someone who is used to reactions. "You never say anything," he said one afternoon. It wasn't a question. It was more like something that had been sitting inside him. The rabbit looked at him, and in that moment, something became clear, not about the crow, but about the noise itself. Then he looked away. The fox found this interesting. After that, he watched the rabbit more carefully, not to understand him, but to find a weakness. In his experience, silence was either weakness or strategy. He wanted to know which one it was. But this was different. The rabbit's silence was neither. It was simply a presence, the kind that doesn't announce itself. The kind the deer found one evening when he came to the old oak at the edge of the meadow and saw the rabbit already there. Not waiting, not watching, just there. The deer sat beside him. Neither of them spoke for a long time. At one point, the deer took a deep breath, not because everything was okay, but because for once, nothing was being taken from him. And for the first time in weeks, something in his chest loosened. It was a kind of quiet he had never learned to value, not until he had already seen what happens when someone stops waiting inside it. And in that moment, a quiet shift began, subtle but impossible to ignore. He didn't need words. He needed someone who wouldn't turn his pain into material. After that, it spread quietly. But no one could say exactly when it began. The news spread differently through the forest, not announced, just felt. Animals carrying things they couldn't say began to find their way to the old oak. The donkey came one evening, carrying something he had never put into words. The elephant came once, slowly, sat for a long time, and left without explanation. Each of them left something behind. Not a confession, not an explanation, just that quiet relief of being near something you don't have to explain. The crow watched from a distance, and for the first time, he didn't know what to do. He had spent so long filling silence that he had never learned what it felt like to be inside it. One morning, before anyone else arrived, he came to the oak. He didn't understand why he came, only that leaving felt more uncomfortable than staying. He told himself he came just to see, but he stayed. The rabbit was already there. For the first time, the crow didn't speak. They sat there longer than he expected. When he finally left, he didn't announce where he had been. He didn't turn it into a story. He just carried it quietly, like something you don't fully understand yet, but aren't ready to let go of either. One afternoon, the fox passed by the oak and saw the animals gathered in a quiet stillness. He watched for a moment, then continued on his way. He had found his answer. It wasn't weakness. It wasn't strategy. It was something else. The fox kept walking, but a little slower than before. In a world that constantly asks you to explain yourself, presence like that becomes rare. Some people talk a lot, but some just stay. And somehow, they change things. Maybe you've known someone like that. Someone who doesn't say much, but makes everything feel different just by being there. Or maybe you are that person. And maybe the reason people feel different around you is not because of what you say, but because of what you don't need to, and you never realized it. Have you ever had someone like that in your life? And in the next story, you'll meet someone who spent so long listening to the world around her that she forgot what her own voice sounded like. Until one day, she finally stopped listening, and everything changed.